Hi, Don Patterson, retired minister, member of the Presbytery here. When I was a kid, a number of my friends during Lent would give things up. They would change their normal way of doing things or their normal behavior or routine uh, voluntarily. Well, maybe not completely. Their parents may have had some influence on that. But things like not eating chocolate or not watching their favorite TV show or having to eat fish every Friday for dinner. I, being a Presbyterian, it was not part of my tradition to intentionally give things up for Lent, give something up for Lent. And so I didn't completely understand it. So I asked my friend Randy when I was in the fourth grade or fifth grade, maybe, I said, Randy, why do you do that? And he said, well, because it reminds us of the special disciplines of the Jesus and the disciples' journey to the cross, things like simplicity and self-control and self-sacrifice, that sort of thing. And I asked him, does it make much difference in your life? And he said, nah, not too much. I don't pay a lot of attention to it. As I got older and hopefully wised up a bit, I began to embrace the values that Randy was talking about, the special disciplines of simplicity and self-control and sacrifice. Hopefully not just during Lent, but more intentionally during Lent. I have been practicing for decades, setting aside some behavior, some practice in my normal routine that would help me focus more on the 40-day journey to the cross. On Ash Wednesday, if anybody had told us what we were going to be experiencing today, I don't think any of us would have totally believed it. It would be really quite out of our ability to anticipate that we would be where we are right now with the coronavirus. We have given things up. We have sacrificed things this Lent. We have exercised self-control more perhaps, or simplicity, or sacrifice things perhaps more than we would have otherwise. It has been a journey perhaps that I wonder if not unlike the disciples as they were following Jesus to the cross. They were unmoored, they were uncertain, they were scared, they were ungrounded, they were grieving. They were uncertain of who they were or where they were going. Their community was in chaos. They didn't function as a community toward the end. One of their members betrayed their master. And I wonder if perhaps the Lent that we are experiencing right now is in some ways similar to the time of the 40 days of Lent with the disciples, especially toward the end. There is a woman named Judith Viorst, who is an author, has written a number of books, children's books and adult books. Maybe you are familiar with one of the children's books, something like Alexander and the Horrible, Terrible, Rotten Something Day. I don't remember the exact title. But she's also written a number of adult books that I think are pretty darn good. And she wrote one in the mid-'80s called Necessary Losses. And in that book, she made the statement, and I'll paraphrase here, I'm pretty close, I think, that the people we are and the lives we lead are greatly dependent upon the nature of our losses and how we accommodate them. And I think she was right on the money with that. In my practice of ministry in the hospital, in trauma and acute care, I often try to help patients and families determine what have you lost, what are you grieving, but also what do you have left. And I think that's part of the ritualization of grieving. When we are grieving, I think I am, and I suspect perhaps you are too, is that the ritualization of grieving is to wrap the grief in some sort of memorial. That's why we have funerals and memorial services, to not only acknowledge what we have lost, but also to acknowledge what we still have, what we have left. One of the things that's powerful for me with the Psalms is that all of them, with the exception perhaps of Psalm 88, have the balance of lament and hope. They begin with a lament most often, and the things that the Israelites have lost, the pains that they've gone through, the turmoil and the travails that they've experienced. But they always end up with a word of hope. Hope for the future. Hope for what they carry with them into the future, and the strength that they have, and the strength that is a gift from God, that is hope. I think if I have any advice for anybody, and I really have given up giving advice, but if I do have any advice, one of the things, and I do this in my life, is to, when I'm grieving, and I am grieving these days, is to acknowledge openly and to myself and to God the things that I have lost and that I miss, that I'm mourning the loss of. But I also, in equal measure, try to offer up an understanding and an awareness of the things that I still have. And if I have any advice for anybody, it is, these days, try to do that as best as you can. It's easy to get focused on the things that we've lost. Let us not forget to remember the things that we still have left. Now, on a last note and different note, we've read about and heard about the doctors and the nurses in hospitals that are doing remarkable work, dangerous work every day when they go to work. And they do. I have nothing but the highest regard for medical professionals that are in the midst of the coronavirus and putting themselves at risk as a result of that. But I would also ask you, us, all of us, to remember the chaplains, our brothers and sisters and colleagues who are in hospital chaplaincy. They step into the breach every day too. They walk in the door of the hospital and they are as vulnerable and as exposed as anyone else, any other healthcare provider. I would ask that you remember them in your prayers. They are very courageous. Perhaps these days in a way that with the coronavirus that is unusually more powerful. Spiritual care is a very important and unique thing these days in healthcare. Let us not forget that. That's all I have. Thank you very much. The end.